What's up, everybody? Nick Powills, publisher of 1851franchise.com, here with another episode of Meet the Zor. Today, we are talking green home solutions. Coming up next. All right, Tom, we'll get into the brand eventually, but I'm always interested in the personal journey. So the question, as scripted as it is, how did you accidentally fall into franchising? What's your franchise story?
Well, I appreciate it. First, I didn't see any script, but let's go into that. How did I fall into it? Literally born into it. I have spent, Nick, my entire life in franchising, virtually from the day I was born. My family owned and operated service station franchises that I was born into, and literally spent my youth in a playpen in the office or the back of a gas station. Then as soon as I was old enough to push a broom or to pump gas or to start working on cars, we were part of the labor force. It was an amazing experience through family to understand what it's like to own and operate your own business. And one of the greatest experiences of my life. I literally stayed there working all the way through, and even after college, managed the business for a period of time until we exited that business. And then went to the other side of franchising and started working for franchisors. And now it's been, God, when I say it out loud, it scares me, over 30 years of on the franchisor side now after having done that. So really have this affinity, and it's really what's held true to me of what it's like to be that owner, operator, franchisee in the space every day, making it happen. And I've carried that over for the last 30 plus years with the opportunity to have worked now. I just added up. There's about 2,900 franchise owners that I've worked with over that time period. So really feel honored and blessed to have virtually done the whole ecosystem of franchising in my career.
Okay, I have a whole bunch of questions I want to unpack from there. And I don't know that I could be as organized as I want to be because there's a bunch. So one is, this family business that you're a part of, you said they exited that portion of, or that part of the portfolio. Did they stay in franchising or business operations after that?
No, it was kind of interesting. And it's one of those things. I'm in my mid to late 20s at the time. And we decided, little did you know now, that we were going to sell the business primarily for the real estate that we owned and operated, sitting underneath these gas stations. Mm-hmm. So we sold them, and they've all became some other businesses. They were no longer service stations, with the idea of, it was kind of funny. My family and my father at the time was like, look, you don't want to be doing this for the rest of your life and working this hard and in the bad weather and doing all this. You were educated. Go find yourself a corporate job. And I'll be honest with you, now in my 50s, I was like, man, I wish we hadn't done that, and I was able to continue to operate and build that business. But it turned out we exited and completely left the business. And then I went to work for one of, the premier. Is actually, he and his wife are in the IFA's Franchise Hall of Fame. I've been blessed to have worked for 3 Hall of Famers. This was Bill and Bonnie Levine at Pip Printing, and spent my first franchising, cutting my teeth at the franchisor level, going in as a franchise business consultant and ultimately VP of operations and VP of marketing for a company called Pip Printing, Postal Instant Press. So that's how I cut my teeth on the franchisor side.
So growing up in an entrepreneurial family, and obviously they exited and moved on with life. But being an entrepreneur, I mean, even in gas stations, like obviously they have a supply chain that is a part of the royalties that they're paying as a licensee, if it's that model. For you, like, has there been a tug? Are you an entrepreneur? Are you a corporate guy?
Well, it's interesting. I've probably been a little of both. I've been very blessed to have been both a partner and a shareholder in a lot of the franchisors that I've been a part of over the last 30 years. So there's always that entrepreneurial bent. And at the same time, it was interesting. As a franchisee, it was funny. I still remember to this day when the franchise business consultant or ops manager from the franchisor would show up to do their image, service, and quality standards on us. The stress of us saying, my God, we've got to clean the bathrooms. We're going to paint the curbs, make sure everybody's wearing a name tag, make sure everyone's well dressed. The place is cleaner than it's ever been. And that the impact it had on us as not only the management, but for all the people that work for us was very uplifting. We took it as stress for the week or the month that we did to fix the place up. But boy, did we all feel better about where we worked. And it was interesting. That stayed with me for the rest of my career as well. That sometimes, as the franchisor, you tend to think, well, we don't want to be the franchise police and coming in and telling them what needs to be changed or improved. But having been on the other side, I saw what an amazing impact it had, and even the impact it had on our customer base, that they would tell us like, boy, the place is looking great. How are you? And even fundamental things like having your name tag on. People remembered your name and they came back all the time. And those kind of lessons, Nick, have stayed with me to this day. When people try to push back on, branding, on your imaging, on the standardization, like, no, you don't understand my market and that doesn't work here. And I'd rather have it this color versus that color. But boy, at the end of the day, I know those things make a difference, not only in the franchisor-franchisee relationship, but in the ultimate end user customer experience with those brands. So it's amazing how that's kind of trickled down. I don't know if that answers your question about the entrepreneur, because I still look at myself as a blend. I am the franchisor and at the same time, this entrepreneur that really resonates with what the franchisees do every day. And still to this day, at Green Home Solutions, some of our best ideas come from the field. And we need to be open-minded and have a perception of those that do this every day can impact the entire brand in a really meaningful way by bringing us opportunities. And we as the executive leadership team of an organization have to be entrepreneurial enough and humble enough to take that feedback and find a way to percolate it back to the entire system in a meaningful and ultimately profitable way.
Okay, so for you on the human side, and I want to uncover this a little bit more. The entrepreneur is a little bit different because, I mean, it's the same reason you would push someone into franchising. Like, do you want to be in control of the 90%, or do you want to be in control of the 10 as an employee? And so I hear like your opening statement over 2,900 franchisees that you've worked with. And so your impact is great. One, along this journey, this career journey, have you explored or have you become a franchise owner too? Or is the driver, when you start realizing your impact or value back to business, does that come in the form of equity, which in turn allows you to be an entrepreneur in that front too?
Well, it does. But at the end of the day, what really gets me excited is having franchisees be successful in their endeavors at the local level, right? I feel like I've spent my first 25, 28 years of my life in the very trenches of operating a business. And what I've learned there ultimately transfers to the ability to make a greater impact on a much greater diversity of people and their families and their customers across the entire country by utilizing the franchise model of distribution. And in some cases, in the franchises I've worked for, we became corporate stores too, right? Which it became very entrepreneurial. We were taking them back, having to operate them as well. But the real crux of the matter is having franchisees that can not only, live their lifestyle, but their income and their equity dreams through that franchise ownership. That's what gets me jazzed and excited, even after 30 plus years of doing this every day.
Well, so if I'm trying to unpack your personal journey, like when you're born into this business, it wasn't that you're born into the entrepreneur side, because you talk about sweeping and cleaning and moving your way up. You were born into operating to help someone else. So it was probably the best education you could get on being an employee, but just be like your family, but you were in a family business, but you were constructed on how to be a great corporate employee.
I think there's a lot to be said there. The work ethic, the sacrifice, the dedication, right? And even, businesses that we operated in that service station business, and it applies to what we're doing today, even at Green Home Solutions, was, we were open 365 days a year, and open in some of the stations were 24/7. So, someone calls out, it's Christmas, it's New Year's Eve, it's holiday. We worked. You know, we gave our employees the chance to spend some time with their families, and we worked it, and we would celebrate the holiday a day or two later, whatever the case may be, because we felt an obligation to serve our customers. And that holds with me to this day, recognizing the work ethic and the sacrifices that business owners need to make in order to really satisfy the customers.
So out of curiosity, because I mean, hot topic at an IFA or any event that you're at is always like, where am I going to find more leads? It's always a conversation. And if I look at you as a human, family business, successful salesperson, financially sound, clearly, because if you suck at sales, you're not going to be financially sound. When you're good at sales, you're financially sound. And so you would fall under the category of a great example of the persona of a franchisee that I would want in my system, because you can follow a process, you can have success, you've made money, and now how do we get you in there? But we can't get you. Like, you don't want to be a franchisee. So what is, like, from a persona standpoint, internally, what is that missing component that maybe obviously helps you find additional franchisees, but you are the ideal franchisee, but why aren't you?
Great question. I can't speak to that other than I have found my calling in helping franchisees. So that has been more than enough, both professionally, personally, and financially for me and my family. So it's not about why I don't do it. I focus on why I do it and the impact it makes on so many other folks that I've been blessed to be able to do. And that's the same way with Green Home Solutions, right? And when we use even the who we're looking for franchise candidates, there's nobody that comes from indoor air quality business. Sure. We are a very unique business. In the home service business, it's an industry that's growing like crazy, but they're not out there, right? It may not be like other home service businesses, like a roofer or a fence or a painter or something. Indoor air quality doesn't exist as a niche that most people know about. So we're looking for people, and I use kind of the Patrick Lencioni model of people that are hungry, humble, and smart. And they can come from any type of industries out there. But if we know that they are humble and willing to be taught, they are hungry to work hard and build something great for their family, and they're smart, not just in book smart, but in common sense smart, right? And can problem solve and connect with people and are good listeners, that's kind of the ideal profile of someone that makes a great franchise partner for us here at Green Home Solutions. So my profile, going back to your question, is a good one, because I'm able to identify those same traits that kind of exist in me and some of my team in those that we're looking to potentially recruit as franchise owners. And I think that's also an important element there, right? We don't try and sell anybody anything. We are recruiting for great partners in that regard, and are highly selective, because it's not for everyone, right? At least our model in our business is it has to be the right fit in terms of skills, in terms of attitudes, in terms of resources, and their commitment and fit to us in terms of our core values. So all of those things we'll get to talk about a little bit more here today, are why although I consider myself kind of at the upside down triangle of franchising, we're the ultimate entrepreneurs, helping entrepreneurs get into it for themselves.
So even when you talk about the extensions, listening, hungry, like, you still have all those. So let me add this question on here, because I think it breaks through to something. So you have all the qualities. I would still everything you've said on what your ideal candidate is. You align with that. You would be my ideal candidate, except for this one piece, which is whatever that trigger is that makes someone say, I no longer want to be Tom, the corporate employee. I'm ready to do this on my own. So you've been doing this long enough. So you've seen people that look like you, have the same background as you, similar story as you, from a career and business standpoint. What is that last trigger? What is the consistency in that last trigger that makes them say why they want to do it now?
Well, I don't know if it's one last thing, right, Nick? We see folks coming from all different types of backgrounds in terms of the triggers that cause this to happen. It may be the realization of a life-changing event. It could be a loss of a job, a loss of a spouse, empty nester, coming into money, losing money. There's all these triggers that cause someone to say, you know what, I'm sick of working for the man, if you will. And now I look for something to be a part of something bigger, yet being on my own. And, the cliche in franchising, and I think it's overused sometimes, but I think it resonates for the right people, especially in a business like ours, that although it's a 10-year-old model and we've got over 200 units in 35 states currently, it is still about being in business for yourself, but not by yourself, right? And that is a very different dynamic, and even the franchise levels of where you are, right? Are you at a maturation of a franchise system that, and I'll use the McDonald's or wherever, where they're literally telling you how to insert key, open door, clean the bathrooms. There is no entrepreneurial aspect left in a model like that, because they're going to dictate from 6:01 a.m. till 6:02 p.m. what you're doing every minute and how you're doing it. A service like ours at Green Home Solutions that focuses on indoor air quality and requires an awful lot of common sense and assessment and finding protocols and solutions. And every one of them is a little different for the way you deal with a customer, right? A hamburger is a hamburger, the fries are the fries. With us, every person and their elements in their home and what they're dealing with in indoor air quality is all different. So part of not what I'm missing is what attracts someone to trigger this is, boy, I like the idea of solving problems at the street level with a client and seeing the difference it really makes in their life. And that's different than a lot of other maybe home service businesses for us too, because in many cases we will hear, you've saved my life or my spouse's or my child's life because of the solutions that we bring that makes their either office or home significantly safer for them to be in. So, and it's one of those things that's kind of interesting as we're thinking about, Nick. I was thinking about this the other day when someone brought it up, and I'll ask you a question. In the US today, what percentage of time do you think the average person spends indoors? From 1 to 100, 100 being 100% of my time is indoors versus 0 being you're never indoors. And that's between work, play, sleep, everything that you do.
Well, it's definitely gone up now that work from home is a thing. I would guess inside 95%.
Man, you are very, very, the closest I've gotten of anybody, Nick. It's 93%. The average U.S. citizen now spends 93% of their time indoors. And as a result of what's going on in the world and even what's going on in the construction industry, both at the residential and the commercial businesses, buildings are getting better and better and tighter. And we're also introducing a lot of VOCs and impurity issues to our processing there. The indoor air quality has become something of no longer kind of the non-spoken thing that everybody is starting to say, boy, I got to make sure where I am living or working is a safe environment. It's not like, working in the coal mines today, you had to have the canary and you knew it was dangerous. It can be equally as dangerous now in your home or your basement or your office, if not evaluated and taken care of. So it's this huge potential industry. And there's, so many folks that are saying, oh my God, well, how big could it be? Well, it's a $210 billion a year industry today. So it's not some small little niche. And there's folks out there saying it's set for revolutionary growth because more and more people are becoming concerned and want to know where they stand and how safe is my home. And almost every real estate transaction now, there's mold tests and air quality tests happening. 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. You didn't do that unless it was obvious. You saw some mold up by the vent, or you go in the basement and you found mold. Now people are becoming much more educated to problem solve it before it becomes irreparable. And that's what's a really cool part about our space and our business.
All right. First comment. I mean this in the nicest way. Boy, are you media trained. You've nailed these points. Like, you're like going point. It's great. But here's my follow-up question, because I've known you and I've known you across multiple brands. I don't think your magic is not selling Green Home. Like, and you use the word development. Like, we're going to develop prospects. We're not going to sell them. Your magic is over your career you're able to articulate what the business opportunity is. So like you sold pretzels, you sold senior care. I would imagine like the widget ends up being irrelevant. It's when you get in and you're evaluating a business, you've taken a job because you're going to be focused on career. You like the career side of franchising. When you're in there and you're evaluating it on your own, because when you're at another brand, you passionately cared about that brand. Is it more so like, especially in today's world, like the candidate, a pretzel candidate 15 years ago, a pretzel brand would have said, we need someone with food service background to buy into it. Today, it's, are you financially qualified and ready to buy? So what is the magic on obviously you've studied your current brand tremendously well, but what's the magic in figuring out the business opportunity? Because ultimately that's what a candidate needs to do too with 4,000 different opportunities to buy.
Well, and it's interesting. This is not a media point, but it brings me back to probably one of my Bibles of business books is Jim Collins' Good to Great. I'm sure a lot of your listeners and others have read it. And the idea of what does it take to take a business and have a breakthrough in growth? And then when it runs its course, do a feedback loop or do a flywheel loop where you go back and do it again. And what I have found, again, after being in this business and having run my own businesses with our family, is that good to great thoroughness that happens on the front end to determine what the buildup is. And first, it's always about the people, right? That any organization that we're going to have is only as good as putting the right people on the right seats on the bus. And, I remember, as an athlete myself, both at the high school and collegiate level, always having coaches to say, practice makes perfect. Well, no, right practice makes perfect. And people, it's about the right people on the right seat on the bus doing the right things that make a difference. And that's both at every level of a franchise organization. It's at the corporate level. It's at the franchisee level. It's at their team or associate level. And even in the way they're interacting and working with their customers is working with the right people, because we can't be all things to all people, and nor can you put round pegs in square holes. And you've got a guy or someone on your team that you really like, but okay, we're going to move them from ops to marketing or to IT or to if they're not the right fit and they don't have the right skills and the right attitude, you have to make the change or make the investment to get those. So ultimately, my whole experience and why I feel I've been successful with multiple brands over the last 30 years is the idea of finding the idea, again, that is good to great, the disciplined people and building the right team. And then having them take the next step for the breakthrough to identify the breakthrough thoughts, being able to understand what you do really well and what you don't do very well, and what you're going to core focus on in terms of the processes, in terms of the thoughts, and getting the buy-in, if you will, of leadership is to enlist the willing cooperation of others, not jamming it down the throat, that everyone believes that we've got the right ideas and the right thoughts in mind. And then it's a discipline of execution or action. Those three things, the disciplined people, the disciplined thoughts, and the disciplined action or execution, ultimately leave an organization from good to great. And I've been fortunate enough to step into a lot of franchise organizations, 5 of them over my career here, that have all been at kind of an influx at the time when I came and had the opportunity to participate with the rest of the organization, franchisees, the franchisor support team, to help work our way through how do we go from where we are to greatness and really block out the sun from the competitors, because we're so good at what we do and so focused in our execution that we can really see phenomenal growth and ultimately phenomenal results for all of the stakeholders up and down the ecosystem.
Well, I think for leadership to listen, any leader, whether it's this brand, another brand, or just philosophically listening to what you just said, you're talking about the culture and the power of working together to drive the success as best as the franchisor can back to that franchisee. And ultimately, like no matter what, if 3,000 franchisees brought in, 30% of them will be at the bottom. That's just pure math, whether it's the real bottom or it's just the perceived bottom, but they'll be at the bottom. When I've looked at why does a franchisee fail, like, and frankly, why a franchisor fails, if what you just said starts and stops at franchise development, the odds of that franchisee succeeding in the system deteriorates, because then when training gets them and operation gets them and marketing gets them, the foundational elements of what you just talked about gets lost, and now they get thrown into the shuffle. And we go back to, like, franchisees say, yes, they invest their life savings into business that they have little to no control over. That's a very, very intimate decision that they're making for their families. And so when we look at the bottom franchisees, in my opinion, it all comes down to accountability. You can tell them, like, this is the expectation of you as the franchisee. And if you are connected in, and not necessarily the COO role, but where you are able to touch the multiple areas of life cycle, then you're ensuring your team is supporting that franchisee throughout. If not, then the accountability factor deteriorates and they fail. So when you look backwards, I mean, I'm sure in some cases probably pressured to sell when, CEO says, I want 500 deals next year out of the sky. But ultimately, when you're saying stamp of approval, Tom says yes to this franchisee, it's because you believe that they have the gumption and the power to go be successful. What happens when it doesn't work out? Like, is it just self-accountability in the way that the culture of the business is operated?
Well, that's a great question, right? I think that's the perennial question in franchising, that sometimes, okay, was it a selection process? Was it a resource process? Was it a training process that break down? Which of those elements are? And if you've got a really good team and you're willing to have the introspective leadership thought at all levels, including the franchisee and even their employees, about what the breakdown is, you have to identify that, right? And I do see historically that a lot of those problems started at the front end of the system, that you brought in someone that may have had the desire and may have had the money to try this, but didn't buy into your core values, was already talking about their original thoughts on how to change the brand. And, it's one of those things, you think you're going to change them after you marry them or after you've brought them in. That's where the mistake gets made. You're not, right? But if you come in, again, that hungry, humble, and smart, and willing to learn, and we're willing to take feedback, but feedback should be taken once you have earned the right to give that feedback, because you have implemented and executed the operating system in a meaningful way, not because you come from the food business and now you want to go into indoor air quality and you're going to tell us how to use the equipment and the protocols and you've never done it before. You have to be willing to surrender to that. And then if there's challenges or problems, that we as the organization leadership have to be willing to, again, take that disciplined thought approach to saying, is there credibility to what they're saying, that we have to make a change in, again, if it's not past the selection process, in what we're doing to train them, or what we're doing in our marketing messages to educate the consumers of what their realistic expectations are on how we deliver our services and at what price and at what turnaround time and the interactions they have. I think it's, again, going back to that whole process of breakthrough, there has to be constant feedback loops, right? And it's not as if, when you award a franchise to someone, they go through that first 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks of training, and then it's like, good luck, keep the royalty checks coming. That's never going to work effectively. And an organization has to spend a lot of time on those open communication chains to understand what they're going through. And we all know, every franchisee will come in as a very uninformed optimist, right? They think they can do it all. And then very quickly they're going to struggle. And then they become the informed pessimist of, holy crap, what did I get myself into? And that's where a real great franchisor can make a difference. Because if you don't take them there and help them make the breakthrough with disciplined thought and disciplined action, you've lost them. And you're going to either lose the unit or potentially, go into a resale situation that's not going to be beneficial for anyone. So it really is at that process when they kind of hit a little bit of their rock bottom or are most frustrated, that you're there shoulder to shoulder, teaching them how to overcome whatever they're doing. And in many cases, what I have seen that they know the answers already themselves. And they're just looking for someone to be able to listen to them and continue to encourage them to go in the right direction, to continue to invest in things like marketing dollars, to continue to invest in their own leadership training or the training of their employees, and assume that just because you've brought someone in from some industry, they know how to do it, what to do it, that you are giving them critical real-time feedback that can impact results. And I think ultimately that whole great spiral of franchising can come out of that, because it's not a set it and forget it in franchising. I think a lot of people are quite naive that they think sometimes they hear, like, even my career, right, Nick? God, you've been in franchising your whole life. Isn't that boring because they're all the same? And my response is, franchising is really a people business, and none of them are the same. So therefore, you need to find out how to motivate and encourage folks to get the most out of themselves through your operating system, not the other way around.
First of all, I'm grateful that we got to connect and talk on this. Secondly, I agree with you 1,000,000,000%. I think sometimes franchisors get confused that you've brought on entrepreneurs, and you haven't. You brought on people who are entrepreneurial. And so if you look at the way that you treat your core staff, it's with kid gloves, it's with feedback loops, it's with evaluating hungry, humble, and smart. Like, all those things happen with your staff. And oftentimes the franchisor doesn't carry that over to the way that they treat the franchisee. And so you're thrown off into this ocean of being a business owner for the first time in your life. And of course there's going to be dark moments. And the franchisor that says, we understand that, let's be there to pick you back up, not only do they make more money off of royalty, they have more satisfaction from their franchisees. And purely you knowing that and having that viewpoint at the front end of the sales process means that you're evaluating people in the right way. And I'm grateful that you were able to share some of your story with us today.
No, I really appreciate it. And, and we even, for ourselves, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners may even come from the franchising industry, we use third parties to validate that, right? The franchise business review, franchisee satisfaction reviews on an annual basis are critical for that, right? We don't want to keep buying our own story. We want to hear what they would be willing to tell others. And we've been honored here at Green Home Solutions to be recognized as one of the top franchisee satisfaction brands out there. And for a small brand, we couldn't be more proud, because ultimately that's what it's about. Their franchisees feel like they're part of something and have it listening. And again, we've only been around for 10 years, founded in 2014 by a serial entrepreneur, Russ Weldon, who came from the wireless business, a box business, and decided to get into something that was going to make a difference in people's lives, both in being, budget friendly, planet friendly, and people friendly, and ultimately finding a way to really differentiate this space with this indoor air quality in a unique model. So it's exciting to see the potential growth of this as long as we continue to do the right things. I know we'll end up getting there.
Love it. Tom, thanks for doing this. For Tom, I'm Nick. This is another episode of Meet the Zor. Obviously, you got the talking points down. So if I've watched this, I know what the brand is. So kudos to you. Good stuff.
Appreciate it, Nick. Thank you. Best of luck.